Welcome to Muddy River News This Week, furnished by Harvey's. I'm Bob Goff. Once upon a time, Hannibal had two hospitals, as did Quincy. Hannibal had Levering, which was located in the Wedge area off of Market Street, and also had St. Elizabeth's, where I was born, on St. Mary's in Virginia. Quincy also had two hospitals, St. Mary's, where my little brother was born once upon a time at 14th and Broadway, and of course Blessing at 11th and Broadway. Then in the early 1990s, Blessing and St. Mary's were going to merge. Well, that merger ended up being a takeover, as Blessing ended up swallowing up St. Mary's, and where the St. Mary's Hospital used to be is now a nice grassy patch on Broadway where Sonic will go soon. Quincy Medical Group was once QP&S, Quincy Physicians and Surgeons, and now it's the home for QPS, Quincy Public Schools at 14th and Main, and Quincy Medical Group is at 11th and Main. They are also out at the Quincy Town Center, formerly known as the Quincy Mall, and we're going to talk about all that stuff. That's a lot of change in probably 30-ish years or so. So we're going to talk about that today with my guest, Carol Brockmiller, the CEO of Quincy Medical Group.
Good morning.
Thank you for stopping by.
Of course.
Appreciate it. So yeah, we've gone from all these hospitals to fewer hospitals, and now Quincy Medical Group wants to bring in a new hospital. Why do we need that?
We do. Well, so we believe we need affordable hospital care. The hospital is a facility. It's about what happens in that facility that is what we're trying to change. Since about 2017, we've been on a mission to really transform healthcare. 30 years ago was great. Now it's 30 years ahead, and things change. Patients' needs change. And so as we have tried to truly transform the way care is delivered, the settings in which it's delivered, under the cost setting in which it's delivered. And for us, physicians want their patients to feel comfortable receiving whatever kind of care they need in the lowest quality setting for whatever their medical condition, caregiver status. And so a small format hospital is very different from a typical hospital that we know today. And so we believe that the care for inpatient is needed, and the hospital is the facility that drives that. It is also part of the transformation efforts that include a surgery center that lowers costs. The hospital will most certainly lower costs. We launched a hospital at home program in the fall. We licensed with Johns Hopkins, who has been doing hospital at home care for some time, and we sort of patterned ours after Mount Sinai in New York, and it's new. It's a concept that will probably grow slower than other things. Hospital care is not for everybody. Inpatient care is not for everybody. So there's a continuum of care that as physicians and their patients are in a relationship and deciding what's best for the current condition, the patient, the needs, we want to provide things that really are different than the care delivery today, and even different from most certainly 30 years ago.
And you're talking, what, 25 beds, correct?
Yes, so it's 25 what's called med-surg beds. So those are the typical, you get admitted to the hospital. There's also 3 OB beds. And so if you hear the 28 beds, it's just 25 plus those 3 OB. ER services and observation beds and ORs, labor and delivery, and then the 25 med-surg beds that we're talking about.
And this will also be at the Quincy Town Center as well?
Yes. Yes. So, we love, the heart of our main campus is downtown. There's 11 acres here, and that is sort of our outpatient setting and has been for 80 years. So whether it was 14th and Main or 11th and Main, we've been down here a long time. And that will continue. But, by luck of the draw, as Bergner's was exiting and filing bankruptcy, we were looking for space for our cancer center. And so now that is located on the first floor of the former Bergner's building. The surgery center will open any day now on the second floor of the Bergner's building, and then sort of behind the mall, but attached, will be the 25-bed hospital. So we're also going to crosswalk that with the surgery center and the Cancer Institute. We don't foresee loads of patient transfers needed. Surgery center is an outpatient setting, but if there is one, certainly we want to have easy access to the hospital. We also have the hospital with a footprint inside the mall town center, so that if somebody is visiting and exiting the mall and wants to shop, dine, or get over to the Cancer Institute or the surgery center, they can also do so inside the mall.
So you're talking it's on the north side of the facility, or the
yes.
Okay. Okay.
Yes.
Trying to picture in my
Yes.
head. So, okay. And you have to get permission from the state of Illinois to do this, right?
Yes.
And you are in the middle of that process right now, and
Yeah.
it sounds like a rather arduous process.
It is. The Certificate of Need process used to be a federal legislation back in the 70s. It was repealed in the 80s, but a handful of states kept the Certificate of Need process. 12 or 13 states still have it. The state of Illinois is one of them. And so any healthcare facility, a new facility, a transfer, a relocation, a change of ownership, or a closure goes before the state of Illinois CON board to be heard. We did that with the surgery center because it's required. And so we're also doing the same thing with the hospital. We did have our partial time in front of the CON board a couple weeks ago, but they lost their quorum by the late afternoon, and so they actually weren't able to hear the project or vote. So they are reconvening on May 26th to do so.
I listened to a little bit of that, and for the hours that you sit online and get on that, and it just seems like this process of back and forth and give and take and he said, she said, and it's, I as a layman or somebody here who's a third party observer, all the information and data that's provided really makes your head spin. But the people who make up this board, are they medical people?
Yes, so Governor Pritzker has appointed the 7 board members who currently sit, and yes, the legislation requires that they have some healthcare experience. Good, bad, or otherwise, there was recently a bill signed into law. It was part of a much bigger piece of legislation that changed the CON process and laws and votes the week before we were scheduled to be heard. So previously you needed 5 yes votes. There can be up to 9 board members. There are currently 7 who are sitting. You have to get 5 yes votes. The week that he signed this much larger legislation into law, it changed the yes votes from 5 to 6. But it also allowed them to increase the board from 9 to 11. There's currently only 7 sitting board members, and we are certainly always hopeful that there's more appointees because we think that they do bring perspective and different viewpoints to any consideration, excuse me, of a facility. So the rules changed the week before our project, and right now there are 7 sitting members, and that on May 4th they lost their quorum. There will be 6 present on May 26th, and currently you do need 6 yes votes. So we have our work cut out for us.
So you have to get all 6 votes. You don't get 4 because there's 6 people there. You have to get all 6 votes because okay, wow.
Yes, yeah. So they do come from healthcare backgrounds, public health, administration, education, physicians. So those will be the 6 that particular day who hear our project.
So if you want to build this in Palmyra, you could just go build it, right?
Mostly. Missouri has CON laws, but they're very, very different and less stringent. And, for you to have gotten in business a month ago, if you can imagine having to go to a board of disparate strangers who are maybe in media, but they would get to decide whether or not you do that. And it's a frustrating process, but it's currently the process that we must go through, and so we shall.
But you did this before with the surgery center and the cancer center, right?
Cancer Institute doesn't require one because it's a medical office building. We are providing oncology care.
Oh, okay.
And then there's certain financial thresholds that if you do something over X, Y, or Z amount, it may require CON approval. But we did perform this with the surgery center. And the first time we were there, they gave us what's called an intent to deny. So if we didn't get all 5 votes, and the first vote I think was 3-2, so then you can go back another time and re-present or tweak something about your presentation, your goals, your finances. So the second time we received the 5 required votes. So
since you're doing this do-over again, so to speak, coming up on the 26th, is that a case where you're tweaking again? You're fixing things again, or you think pretty much your first proposal is going to stand and you feel confident in it? Yeah, the application stands as is. Certainly our message may change ever so slightly, but I mean, we have a really strong project. The vision, the support from the community, the input from patients was important for many years now, and so our message doesn't change much in that regard. But we want to hear from the CON board members too, because we want to have a conversation with them about questions that they may have. We've engaged industry experts, small format hospital experts, regional CEO of hospitals. And so, we think that the story that we tell is pretty compelling, and
that's what we'll do on May 26th and see what happens.
What's your lead? What's the strongest part of your case?
Well, I would say twofold. Choice and competition lowers costs. We will see it the day we open our surgery center, which is any day now. We've actually performed the first 10 cases and just pending Medicare approval. And so, we lowered costs. Physician groups are nothing if not efficient and less layers, bureaucracy, things that get in the way of a physician-patient relationship. So removing those also just creates efficiencies and energies and then cost savings. So we priced our surgery center very competitively, affordably, and everybody will save money. We've done the same thing with the hospital. So it is about choice, but it's also about just delivering care in a very different way. You'll see throughout the United States that truly health systems, large and small, they are getting out of the brick and mortar business. They're getting out of the capital business. Everything is moving to an outpatient setting. Medicare is approving more and more things for an outpatient setting, like a surgery center. But at the same time, we know that there is a way that we want to deliver health care that is difficult to do sometimes in a typical hospital setting. So a small format hospital is truly what it sounds like. It's very efficient, it's very lean, it's very process driven with very few layers between the physician and the patient. As a result of that, patients are engaged at a higher level. People aren't standing in a room talking at them or about them, they're talking with them. And there's a difference between everybody functioning at the highest level of their licensing and credentialing and everybody being engaged and on the team. Patients go home sooner, they stay out of the hospital longer, it costs less, and if they don't need to be there at all, right? If you didn't need the ER, if you don't need to be admitted, if hospital at home services will work, or if a physician's office visit will work, then we want to provide things along that whole continuum, but at the same time lowering costs and delivering a truly different patient-centered experience.
It's also, in one of your other services you provide, or the telemed or the teledocs or whatever, where you can say, hey, I've got a sinus infection, I have the sinus infection every year, I know it's a sinus infection, can I just talk to the doctor and take care of this? And that seems to be something that many people prefer.
Very popular,
Yeah.
Very popular. So telemedicine has been, developing for years, decades. It has a really nice niche in regard to behavioral health. Folks just feel better if I can sit in my home and maybe talk to a therapist about something that I need. But then because of the pandemic, COVID caused people to, A, have to stay home, and then B, want to stay home, but they still wanted to talk to their doctor. And doctors are resilient and innovative and forward-thinking. And we stood up telehealth across the organization almost overnight. And that took buy-in, support, some technology. But one of our primary care physicians, Dr. Rick Noble, who's 39 years in practice, he said that he actually learned more about his patients while talking to them in their settings. Wow. Right? Because, you kind of get dressed up, you shower and clean and go to the doctor's office. But he had a gentleman dial in from his tractor in the field. Now, what do you plant? What does this look like for you? What's your stress level? What about sun intake? Or somebody who dialed into their telehealth visit still in bed and they didn't look like themselves and they weren't quite right. Or maybe, there's just something about being inside a patient's home or their environment that they, share more or comfortable, let down a little bit. And so we actually, some of our physicians feel like they learned more about patients, even though it's, digital. You can't touch.
No.
But yet it worked really well, and it still is for patients under the right conditions, the right settings, and yeah.
Back to the what we were talking about previously, and kind of wrapping things up here a little bit. You have in the past, Quincy Medical Group and Blessing Hospital had relationships, had shared services, all that kind of stuff. That I assume is lessened now, correct?
We will always have a relationship with Blessing Hospital.
Sure.
Period, end of sentence, right?
Right.
Our physicians walk in that hospital every single day and care for patients and perform surgeries and admit and discharge, and that will never change. And we would like to be in the hospital business, along with surgery center and hospital at home and the office visits. And so it's about providing that continuum of care and truly, an electronic medical record that allows access to information, less duplication of services. But our physicians will round into hospitals. They are a trauma level hospital, stroke and heart, and so that won't change.
But there's still, this situation, because they are, strongly opposing this, it does create a bit of a disconnect, doesn't it?
Sure. I mean, it's hard for change.
Yeah.
What happened 30 years ago when there are 2 hospitals is very different than today. We don't oppose projects, so I don't know if I can speak to the opposition. We don't
Right,
oppose projects.
right.
We believe in competition. The hospital started a physician group 15 years
Yeah.
or so ago, and we didn't object, we don't fuss. I would suggest that it actually causes everyone to up their game. You just think about, I want to provide the best care for my patients. I want to know my patients. I want them to choose us for all of the right reasons. And the more patients are paying out of pocket for deductibles and copays and things, the more they're going to shop for cost, value, relationships. And so our physicians, in seeing the future of healthcare, and it aligns with all of the national and state initiatives, everything about what we're doing is, it may feel new to Quincy. It's not new at all. There's 60 small format hospitals in the United States, and we are but one of them, and it really does serve a niche market. We will be most things to most people. It's not a trauma level. So,
Right.
There's always going to be that need.
What is the one point you would like to stress before we wrap things up?
Probably that, we see the world of healthcare moving in a different direction. And when it moves into outpatient, there's still always that need for some will need to be hospitalized. The 25 beds is just it's such a negligible amount in the big scheme of things. The whole picture of the cost of care and the quality and the patient experience is what we're trying to achieve. If people see Quincy as the regional medical hub that it's becoming, thanks to QMG and Blessing Hospital, folks are driving this way rather than outward. So, St. Louis and Columbia and Springfield and Peoria and places that folks used to think that they needed to go to for healthcare, they drive here now. So while the population of Quincy hasn't, exploded in the past decade or anything, folks come this way, and so we know that there's an increase in need, and it's a huge economic development driver. Our physicians, for over a decade now, we have had a 95% physician satisfaction rate, recruitment and retention rate. And so when physicians and their families move to town, and then their secondary families move to town, it adds to the economic development, but at the same time, our structure is such that QMG pays taxes. We're actually the #1 taxpayer for the city of Quincy, and Quincy Town Center is #2, right? So we're partnering with somebody who, will renovate that mall and become multi-purpose. But at the same time, the QMG hospital will be not-for-profit, but taxable. And so, that's a very unique structure. We believed in it and talked to CMS about it, Medicare, and received their approval for our structure. And so, we want to contribute to the economic development, but we really want to change healthcare.
Thank you very much, Carol. Appreciate the time.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Well, healthcare is always evolving. As we talked about, the hospitals we had in the 70s and 80s and 90s, we don't have anymore, and here we are again with more change. Well, creating jobs and competition, lowering costs all sound like good things, but again, it will be the state of Illinois that will have the final decision, and we will report on that when it happens as well. I'm Bob Goff for Muddy River News, furnished by Harvey's. Thanks, and we'll talk to you next time.